Welcome to the Month End CPG Community Chat. The Month End will provide emerging CPG brands real-life knowledge into the accounting, finance, and operational worlds. Our guests will be key stakeholders from those same brands as well as other key contributors to the industry. Welcome to episode 34 of the Month End Podcast. Today we have Sean Lee from Sweety Ice Cream. How are you doing today, Sean?
Hey, Brad. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Sean's a co-CEO of Sweety and works in a family business, and I'm excited to learn more. So let's get started. First off, Sweety Ice Cream. How long have you been in the business? What do you sell? Where do you sell? Just give us a little elevator pitch from the business.
Yeah, sure. So Sweety, in its first iteration, was started back in 1978. It was started by my mom before she met my dad as just like an Asian scoop shop in Monterey Park, which is a very Asian neighborhood of Los Angeles. At that time, she couldn't really find Asian flavored novelties or ice cream in that area of Los Angeles. So she decided to open up that store herself. In that process, she was struggling to get like the ice creams to her store. So she decided to start actually doing the manufacturing side of things as well. And that's how she got into, the Sweety as a branded CPG type item. So it's been around for a while. It's kind of mostly just been on Asian supermarkets. We were really known at the time for doing like red bean popsicles, durian, taro, so very, very traditional Asian popsicle novelties. Me and my sister, we decided to get involved just a couple years back, right before the pandemic. At that time, the company was still very small. It was essentially just being run by my uncle and my aunt at the time, and they kind of wanted to retire. So we were at this inflection point deciding like, hey, what are we going to do with this business? Do we just kind of wind it down and shut it down when they retire? Or do we want to put some money and time into it, reinvest into it, and then relaunch it? So the decision was made to kind of get involved in this business. So yeah, me and my sister, we started doing a rebrand. At the time, we had done popsicles and mochi ice cream. We saw a lot of potential in the ice cream side, or the mochi ice cream side of the business. So we decided to just focus on that side. And we launched right as the pandemic started. And it's kind of just been a wild ride ever since.
I bet that's a very cool story. So you said since 1978. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So when you guys took it over, or you decided to take it over, like what was that process like? Did you look at every aspect of operations and say, all right, we're starting a new company, taking these assets, taking the IP, relationships with, suppliers, manufacturers? Like, how did that whole process go? Or how did you look at that and execute that?
I think for us, it was, we wanted to kind of preserve a lot of the things that made Sweety what it was. Still a large piece of our business is still kind of that original core Asian supermarket customer. So that kind of informed some of the decisions that we were making in terms of we were doing further R&D of our product. I think that was the two first things we really did, was to revamp the branding and then also kind of look at how we can tweak some of the flavors and R&D of the product itself. We got rid of some flavors at the time. We got rid of the popsicles, but it was important for us to kind of remain true to some of our roots. So we still do like a red bean mochi ice cream. We've continued to add other Asian flavors. We have a Vietnamese coffee. We do an ube as well, and along with that, it was also just at that time back in the day, like my parents would cook red beans. We started basically in our kitchen. They would cook red beans and then they would, use the red beans in the popsicles that we make. So for us, we still do a lot of things internally. We get, raw ube puree, frozen puree, and we cook that and we use that in our ube ice cream rather than, just focusing on flavoring or coloring. We like to use the original ingredients as much as possible.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. And so then where exactly are you guys selling all these products now?
Yeah, so we launched, and our first large retailer actually ended up being Walmart, which was not the plan. So I mean, that's one of our biggest retailers is Walmart. We're also, you can find us at Albertsons and Safeway in Southern California, Northern California, and Hawaii. And we're actually going to be launching in Costco, Los Angeles, later uh, this fall. So yeah, please, if you guys go to Costco if you live in the area and support our product, really appreciate it. And then, of course, a lot of the Asian supermarkets across all of the United States.
Gotcha. So you are national on with Asian supermarkets, but gotcha. And then clearly, like selling ice cream, it's really hard to dive into direct consumer aspect, right?
A direct to consumer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we would. I'm always jealous when I see other brands like being able to do like little giveaways and direct to consumer. Yeah, it's such a cool way to have access to your customers in such a direct way and get that feedback. Sadly, it's very tricky to do with ice cream specifically. Just the
Yep.
supply chain makes it extremely expensive. Um,
Yep.
yeah, even when you're using a 3PL, it's quite expensive. Your
Yep.
product is from selling at the grocery at around anywhere from $4.99 to $6.99, and then it's selling at you know $12.99 in a direct to consumer environment. There's also just a lot of waste involved in that process because you have to add all this extra packaging from
Yeah.
the insulating materials. You have to get dry ice.
Mm.
And if there's any shipping delays, your product is just it's
Yeah.
lost, which is really
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a disadvantage for the frozen products on the direct consumer space. So then from on the inventory side of things, like what is your supply chain like and internally operationally, how do you manage that from supply chain, raw materials, products, 3PLs, et cetera?
Yeah. I mean, we have a pretty small facility. We manufacture everything out of basically our original location in Monterey Park. So yeah, inventory management is really crucial for us. It's also just very expensive being in a frozen category as well. So um, prior to bringing on Walmart, everything was kind of inventoried at our own facility. And we've just been finding creative ways to expand our frozen storage. Um, yeah, we've been using kind of these frozen shipping containers, and that's how we've been able to add additional frozen storage. When from a real estate standpoint, we're limited, and that gave us kind of a way to kind of just flex that and slowly add as we went along, and needed more frozen space. But once we brought on Walmart, it's a whole nother game.
Yep.
We brought on a 3PL, so basically they kind of handle when you work with Walmart, they have something called like a pooled system. So you ship to a 3PL, they will pool your inventory with other Walmart customers, and then they'll kind of just distribute out to all the different DCs. So we almost kind of treat that almost like its own kind of supply chain.
Yep. So then on the manufacturing side, like how many how do you manage your team in terms of making the product? Do you have an inventory system, specific like KPIs you look at, or just kind of how do you guys view that internally?
Yeah, I mean, for the longest time, we just did everything kind of in a Google Sheets. Yeah, so we built out our sales forecast. From our sales forecast, we know our bill of materials. We'd be able to forecast out what the weekly, monthly, annual usage was. You keep track of kind of what lead times are. I would come up with basically, what was the safety stock that we wanted, what was the reorder quantity, and kind of basically made a relatively simple system to basically say, but once it hit this point, then my team would know to go out and reorder this. Only recently we started to transition over to actual inventory tracking software.
Gotcha. How's that going? Is that adding more value, or is it more of a headache versus just a
uh,
simple Google sheet?
yeah, it's doing that type of transition is always a process. It takes a while to do that implementation, um, and see that return, just because it's just the level of accuracy that you need, um, from like each of your workers, just because you really have to be perfect on your lot traceability, on your usages. It's no more, you can't just kind of swag it anymore and then just like do an inventory count and just like fix things then.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, yeah, we only really did this a couple months ago, so it's still kind of working out all those kinks, but eventually you're going to see benefits from just having that ease of access to that data. Whereas a lot of the stuff was, very manual, and you just didn't have that same traceability that you have with something like that. But
Yeah.
with those systems, it's garbage in, garbage out.
Yep. Yeah, that's the norm. When we talk to like our brands and clients we work with, it's like there comes a point where a Google Sheet, an Excel document, or however you manage it, it's more time efficient, more cost efficient. It gets you to where you need to go. There is a phase of your business that's like, all right, we need to become more precise, more real-time information. And then that's when you have to jump to something like what you're talking about. And
Yep.
it's painful, but once it becomes part of the company operating system and workflow, then it's pretty seamless at that point. But it can be definitely a pain. But there's advantages with it, but it's definitely more costly and more time intensive to do so. So, well, good. And then in terms of just your overall manufacturing supply chain, like what are some of the mistakes that have happened? You've already mentioned like having a frozen product and waste on packaging with direct consumer, or if a delay in shipment, the product can be wasted. But is there any like big mistakes you guys made from just more of a supply chain operational standpoint that impacted your business that you learned from?
I think for us, because we made such a big leap in terms of the scale, just taking on such a large retailer like Walmart, and even then, like we wanted to slow play it a little bit. We were like, hey, we only want to we don't want to bite off too much. But even then, like the volume step up it was so huge. So just like staying ahead of those initial orders when they do that initial fill, like it was definitely intense. Like how much we had to ramp up to keep up. And even though we kind of forecasted how much we needed, it just, yeah, the scale of it was just a whole nother level. Once you kind of get past that, then you have, prior year data to be able to kind of forecast better. You've gone through it, you've ramped up everything, but being on both the manufacturing side and kind of the CPG side, it definitely was a step up in terms of the complexity, just all that, adding all that scale.
And your background is like finance and operations, right?
Yeah. I've kind of a relatively varied background. I've done finance and strategy at asset management, at a retail environment. I went back to get my MBA at UCLA, and that's when I started getting involved more in kind of the food business. My family has other food manufacturing companies, so that's where I started to get more involved on this side of the industry.
So then you also on, operationally with the inventory side of things, you oversee that, but also you're handling kind of the forecasting, the modeling, the accounting and all that aspect, right?
Yep.
So then from like a financial standpoint, in terms of like a model forecast budget, like what is your plan or strategy in terms of how you do that? Do you keep it updated monthly? Do you review it, looking backwards each month? Do you what is your, your just overall workflow with your forecasting model?
I would say it's like we kind of review the forecasts on a quarterly basis. For us, it really depends on kind of how our cash flow situation is. The tighter it gets, the more we're going to have to kind of look at that maybe monthly, even weekly. Thankfully, we've been very, very efficiency focused to make sure, as a manufacturing facility, we are trying to, have cash flow, positive cash flow. That gives us you a little bit more leeway to kind of work within your financials.
Yep. Are you then with the way the economy has changed or shifted the last kind of 9 to 12 months with interest rates and with fundraising kind of slowing down a little bit, has there been any changes in terms of how you changed your business from more to expense management, efficiencies, cash flow, or was that always how you kind of looked at your business even beforehand?
I think, the things that some of the challenges that we've been facing recently is more just kind of the inflationary impacts that we've seen on our margins. Um, I think that's where, we were pretty comfortable before, but now it's definitely constrained us a little bit more, and just um, keeping ahead of kind of what competition is doing as well. Um, I would say we've been a little bit late to the game in terms of price adjustments. We've seen that some other competitors do essentially, shrinkflation. Um, so I think that's where it's definitely put some pressure on us to kind of stay ahead of things like that. Um, so yeah, it's just kind of learning and trying to move a little bit quicker on those.
How do your like retail partners, how do they take like price adjustments, or like what is that process like?
Each year has been different, right? I think last year, when everybody was raising prices, they were basically like, yeah, we're getting it from everybody else, just put it in. You started to get a little bit more pushback. Situation has kind of slowed down a bit. Um, so I see it just kind of changing from year to year. At the end of the day, like, we have to make enough money to be able to cover our operating margin. So it is what it is. And we have to be able to kind of just push that through.
Definitely on the accounting side of things, managing cash week over week, reviewing financials each month. Is that your cadence? Are you the one that handles that, or do you have like another team member that helps support that process?
I mean, thankfully, like, because we have other food manufacturing businesses, we were able to leverage kind of some of that back of house infrastructure. So they're able to kind of produce financials for me, and then I review them on a monthly basis. And then I make sure to kind of review that with the other departments to get feedback, because I don't have full visibility on what are all the marketing promotional activities that we're doing. So if something's tracking high, I want to get that input from Tiffany, who's our CMO.
What are the first three like numbers or line items you look at in the monthly financials when they get sent to you?
I mean, for me, it's always kind of uh, gross margin is kind of the big one that we're always looking at.
Mhm.
And just to go a little bit even deeper, like, again, because we're doing the manufacturing ourselves, like, just on a daily basis, even, or weekly, like, I'm reviewing kind of what our production yields are for each of our production runs, and I'm also tracking, what is our labor cost for each case that we're producing. Or you can also look at labor hours for each cost, just to make sure that my production staff is running or continue to run things efficiently. Being in Los Angeles, we know that your wages are going to be increasing every single year, but trying to maintain that efficiency, at least on a labor hour basis, is important.
Gotcha. Has there, from a manufacturing standpoint, clearly, you said you moved to more of a 3PL model afterwards on the Walmart side, but is there clearly you have a family history with the manufacturing facility, things like that. At any point, have you thought, man, it would have been easier to use a co-man or like differently in terms of that versus managing, that entire process? Or are you happy in terms of where you're at? I'm sure it's kind of a push pull at times.
Yeah, it's a push pull. I mean, it's nice to be able to have control over everything. Your quality, the R&D, like every single input, and just have that visibility into everything and that control. On the flip side, like, just from a future expansion type situation, like the capital requirements that are going to be necessary to grow from a $20 million revenue business to a 50 to 100. You have kind of different calculations there, because it's not like we can just go to a different co-man and get kind of scale from just the volume. It's we need to figure out, okay, how do we expand our manufacturing capacity in the mochi ice cream space. It's not really, there's not a bunch of co-mans out there doing this. It's a relatively specialized product, um, and we like doing it because I think that's what really sets us apart. Is our ice cream and our dough that we make, it's different from our competitors, and it's because we manufacture ourselves. But yeah, just the capital investment required to expand is just such a different calculation than if you were kind of a co-man based
Yeah.
company.
Definitely benefits on both sides of the spectrum, and risk and costs on both sides as well. In terms of just overall, I'm just like on your website, you guys have what, 8 flavors? Is that right?
Yep.
Any big plans to expand in the short term with new flavors?
Yeah, we're always looking at, flavor innovations. I think, yeah, it's interesting. I have a very different kind of outlook than, sales and marketing. Like,
Yeah.
sales and marketing, they always love to do crazy flavors, and I'm always like, ooh, like, like, are we gonna get stuck with inventory? Like, and then what happens with that inventory? When you do a seasonal. But I think that's just part of the cost of doing business sometimes, because certain retailers, they want to have those seasonal items, even if from a margin standpoint you're going to struggle to make that back. There's a component of just marketing, but at the same time, it's fun from an operational standpoint, from R&Ding new flavors. Like, we're working on a bunch of new flavors right now, and it's like, what's more fun than trying different ice creams?
Yep.
So that's the part that I really enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah, every time as a background of an accountant or on the finance side of things, every time you look at inventory, like, you just see dollar signs. So it's always funny.
Exactly.
All right, well, we're wrapping up or winding down this podcast. For all the listeners out there, we always end our podcast with 2 questions: one do and one don't. So what is, from your perspective, one do to fellow CPG, emerging brand founders out there?
Yeah, I would say, be mindful of kind of your retail go-to-market strategy, and just kind of understand the trade-offs that are going to come with that. I think, we were in this unique situation where we were presented this opportunity. Walmart has been an incredible partner with us. We got through their open call program and got, just national distribution, and just, like, we weren't going to turn that down. But at the same time, like, that wasn't our initial plan. Like, we had no idea that that was the direction we were going to go. And that kind of just, it's worked for us. But at the same time, like, you have to be aware that there's trade-offs to any go-to-market strategy. Um, you know, Especially in terms of whether you're doing natural or club or conventional. Yeah, if you go one direction, it can potentially close doors to another channel. So.
Definitely. And then on the other side of that, like, what is one don't?
I think to go along with that is, like, don't be afraid to pivot, and just kind of continue to reevaluate what your strategy is going to be, depending on kind of how you've pivoted, to make sure that the rest of the company and the strategy is aligning, so you don't have, like, a mismatch of, like, let's say, where you're selling versus kind of your marketing or your supporting infrastructure, whether it be brokers or distributors. Like, just make sure you're being nimble in terms of reevaluating, and then, like, restructuring kind of your supporting strategies. Yeah.
Yep, couldn't agree any more on that. Well, Sean, I really enjoyed the chat. Before I let you go, like, where can people find Sweety Ice Cream? What's your social, your URL? What do you got going on just from a promotion standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, just you follow us on Instagram, Sweety Ice Cream Co. We're on TikTok. In terms of our product, find us at Walmart, Albertsons, Safeway in Southern California, Northern California. You can find us in Asian supermarkets. And then, yeah, if you're in LA, please swing by Costco and pick up our new combo pack there.
Awesome. Well, Sean, I really enjoyed the chat. Hope the listeners hope the listeners did as well out there. We're signing off here on episode 34 of the Month End Podcast. Sean Lee. Thanks again, Sean. Take care.
Yeah, thank you for having me.